Hello lovely people, I'm Debs. Welcome back to my channel, Raina Read Stuff. I am here in the book shack. It's been very wet today. I've been away for a few days, you might have seen on my community channel, so not a lot's been done. I've been playing with my gorgeous grandson, chatting with my lovely daughters who are both pregnant and both are due within the next 7 weeks. Staying with my mum, raiding my father's library, doing all those lovely, delicious things. So, I thought I was going to make it back for Tag Tuesday. I didn't, so we're having Tag Wednesday. And I am going to do the Windows and Mirrors reading tag, which has been created by my lovely friend Pat, who has just topped 5,000 subscribers, which is wonderful and extremely well deserved. She was an English teacher for more than 40 years and had the pleasure of studying with a teacher called Emily Style, who published a theory of curriculum called Curriculum as Window and Mirror. And its basic premise is that a reader needs to be able to look out of a window and experience things that are different from their own lives, but equally they need to be able to look in a mirror and experience things that they recognize as part of some aspect of their own life. So there are 4 prompts to this. And the first one is talk about a few books that served as mirrors to you, allowing you to see some aspect of your life experience reflected in a meaningful way. I've chosen 4, and they're all from different periods of my life. So I don't have an image of the first one because I've packed the book away and it's upstairs somewhere in a box, buried. So the first one is The Didakoi by Ruma Godden. It's a children's book by the woman who wrote Black Narcissus. And it's about a little gypsy girl who, she's a Romany and she travels around the country with her grandmother, horse and cart. She gets to a village that they stay at regularly, and they're allowed to stay in the main landowner's orchards. He's always let them stay there. And her grandmother dies. And the question comes, what to do with Kizzy, the little girl. And social services become involved and she's fostered out. But the kids call her Didakoi, which is a derogative term for a traveller. And she finds it difficult to fit in because she's so different. And that sort of mirrored my feelings when we came home from Australia and I went for the first time to an English school, and there was this little brown, hair was sun-bleached child with an Aussie twang who felt as though she didn't fit in. Nobody quite knew anything about her. And on top of that, she had a disabled brother, only the one at this time. And it's about being made to feel as though you don't belong, as though there's something weird and catching about you. And I just love that book. I still love it now. Now, a bit later in life, when I was a teenager, I I hung around with, I was a teenager, early teens in the 80s, and I hung around with a group of skinheads, rough and ready, big Dr. Martens, no hair. My mother, who's frightfully nice, and a little bit posh. And most of her friends were horrified by this gang of lads that I hung around with. Not so much my dad. My dad got them to do useful things like dig the foundations for our extension and things like that. I've chosen The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton for this period of my life. It seemed to me like there was a divide in society, even though it was the 80s, by the sort of middle class, well-to-do, and those who wanted to rebel a bit. And I belonged to one and wanted to be part of the other. These lads, incidentally, one day they said to me, "We'll meet you tomorrow." And I said, "No, I can't tomorrow. It's my brother's birthday, and he's got some of his friends coming round for a party." And they said, "Disabled friends?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "So I've got to stay and help out." Anyway, the following day, this party starts. There's a knock on the door. I open the door, and there's 5 lads standing there with skinheads and jack boots on. And I said, "I told you I couldn't come out." They said, "No, we've come to help." And they handed over a card. They'd had a whip round, put £1 in each, gave Neil a £5 for his birthday. And they came in and did the disco for Neil and all his friends. I think my mum changed her mind about them then. Right, next up also is one that references my brother. And this is Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck. And this, I think, is the most perfect example of a novella. And I love it. But it's a hard book to read because every time I read it, I think about my brother. This is about a guy whose friend is a little bit slow. He's a great big strapping lad and doesn't know his own strength, and they are wandering around California looking for work, and trouble ensues. And it just makes me think, I've always felt responsible for my brother. It was my job to make sure that he kept out of trouble and people didn't upset him too much. And Of Mice and Men is really a difficult read for me because I wonder what I would have done in those circumstances. Lastly, is another one that I've related to my family, and it's one I read very, very recently. Oh, I did have Of Mice and Men. Look, there's Of Mice and Men, and there's The Outsiders. It's another one that I read. It's one that I read really recently, and it's called When the Cranes Fly South, and it's by Lisa Ridson, and it's a debut novel, and it's about an elderly man whose wife has been taken away to live in an Alzheimer's care home because she is beyond caring for in the home anymore. She doesn't recognize him. They have a son and they have a granddaughter. And also, he has a dog. His name's Bo. He has a dog. And his son has organised carers to come and help him I think they come 4 times a day to look after him. But it's about him feeling as though he's no longer in control of his life. He has a friend that he chats to on the phone. And his son has suddenly decided that Bo's incapable of looking after the dog anymore and wants to rehome the dog. And that's just the final straw. And that struck a nerve with me because I'm almost in the same situation with my mum, who is going to be 86 in November. And my younger sister wants her to go somewhere where she can be cared for. But my mother doesn't think she needs caring for. She's just had to give up her car, which she very kindly gave to me. And she's 86, nearly 86, but she's not stupid. She doesn't have dementia. She does repeat things, but then so do I. And I don't want to take away her control over her life, but I want her to be safe. And my sister and I aren't at loggerheads or anything, but we don't particularly agree on the best way forward. And my sister's attitude is to tell her, and mine is to try and make her feel that she's in control for as long as absolutely possible. So, those are a few books. Number 2, talk about a couple of booktubers whose reading is most like your own. Well, first up, my great friend Pat at Book Chat with Pat. Often we are reading the same thing because we've been attracted to the same events or to the same group reads. We've buddy read together. Pat has very wide knowledge of particularly, obviously, books that are taught in schools. So I can learn a lot from her as well. But we do appear to be interested in very similar genres, especially now she's developed a love for science fiction. Next up, Angelia, Read and Reread. And I've chosen her because what she chooses as reading matter is as wild and eclectic as my own. We also have been members of the same reading groups and events. But when you tune in to Angelia's Friday Reads, you never know what you're going to come up with, what she's going to come up with. And I really like that. For the same reason, Aaron read a book, Aaron read a book. He has a wildly diverse interest in various genres. And again, he's one that you never know what you're going to see when you tune in to one of his wrap-ups. He doesn't read a lot of newer fiction. He tends to read back catalogue stuff, but his tastes are very varied, and I really enjoy that. Brindis at Brindis Daughter of Gunner is, I don't know whether she's posting at the moment. She's an Icelandic lady, and we also have very similar tastes, particularly in classics and in crime. And finally, Roz at Scallydandling About the Books. I have a similar interest in reading around the world as Roz does, and we both read a lot of works in translation. And I love her channel. She reads some fabulous things. And again, we have been members of the same groups on many occasions. Right, now we get to talk about a few books that served as window frames for you, allowing you to see the reality of others outside your experience. Okay, we are going, do excuse my neighbours yelling, again with a John Steinbeck, and this time we're going with The Grapes of Wrath. And this not only takes you back in time and highlights a period of time that I don't know about, particularly the 1930s, set against the Dust Bowl, Oklahoma and California, where so many people were forced off land that they'd farmed for generations because they just couldn't make anything grow, and relocated to California, where they were treated with fear and hatred. And it's so brilliantly written, and it just opens your eyes to how fear, especially group fear, can turn people from normal human beings into these hideous creatures that don't have any sense of empathy. And to a certain extent, that's happening in our world now. I read that this summer. It was brilliant. Another one I read, I think earlier this year, actually, and I read this with Pat at Book Chat with Pat. Their Eyes Were Watching God, Zora Neale Hurston. This is just so good. This is one of the very greatest American novels of the 20th century. It's beautifully written, and it not only shines a light on the experience of Black women, it shines a light on the experience of women who were forced into marriages against their will, who didn't have any, again, control over their lives. First of all, it's their family who are dictating what happens to them, and then after that, it's their husbands. Pat had read this many, many times before. It was my first time, and I thought it was just glorious. Then we have this. This is Broken April by Ismail Kadare, Albanian-born writer. I read this prior to going to Albania, and Kadare's writing style is very spare, and he manages to impart emotion and a sense of place without any flowery nonsense, there's no superfluous words in here. This is all about the Kanun, which is a blood feud code in the Albanian mountains. And we have a guy who is about to shoot the person who killed his brother. And as soon as that happens, he knows that his victim's family will be after him and they will shoot him. And then his family will shoot or kill in some way whoever killed him. And it just goes on and on. There is a 30-day grace period after a killing. So he will shoot the guy that's walking along in front of him. He's going to ambush him. Then there'll be 30 days where no one can touch him. But after that, the victim's family, they're gunning for him. And they're going to find him. And eventually they're going to kill him. It's a really interesting book, and I'd never come across anything like that. But it happened. The Qanun was a real thing. I don't know whether it still is, but certainly it was. And this book introduced me to an author who became one of my favourites. Finally, another one that I read very recently, and this is To Sir with Love by E.R. Braithwaite. This is the true story of a guy from the Caribbean who comes to this country to do a master's degree. War breaks out. He joins the Air Force and he fights for the UK. And then the war ends and no one will give him a job. He's an engineer, but prejudice is such that he cannot get work because he's too highly qualified, and he would have to give instruction to white workers and they wouldn't like it. So he ends up as a teacher. He ends up as a teacher in the East End of London, and this is the story of his first year teaching. And it's brilliant. It's brilliant, and it highlights the prejudice that the Windrush generation were suffering when they came to this country at the request of our government. They came because we asked them to. What they had to put up with and how they coped with it. But it's also how a poor working class East End of London community embraced a guy from the other side of the world, and it's fabulous. Talk about a couple of booktube channels that have expanded your horizons and helped you to explore books or genres out of your comfort zone or challenged you in some way. Right, first up for these are two that actually fit into both categories. So a lot of their reading is like my own, but equally they've challenged me in a number of ways. And one is Alan from Big Hard Books and Classics, and the other is Greg from Another Bibliophile Reads. We read some things that are similar. We read Ulysses together. We read the Brothers Karamazov together. But equally, they have encouraged me to read way outside my comfort zone. And I've enjoyed both. So they actually fit into both categories. But the ones that I've chosen that are specifically for this category, the first one is Alan from Alan's Reads, who is a biologist and loves nature and nature books and books about wildlife. And he has really got me into reading nature books. I've read several, and it's a new genre for me. And I look out for them now if I see them in secondhand bookshops or my father's library or cheap on, can't remember what it's called, BookBub. I will buy them. I've just picked up All Creatures Great and Small by James Herriot, which I've never read before, which Alan and I are going to buddy read in January. Aaron Chaser. He reads classics that I've never heard of. He reads poetry that I've never heard of, but he inspires me to broaden my horizons and look outside your usual classics to find works by other authors and often works from people in translation. I love his write-ups. He's always got something interesting to say, and he just sounds so calm. I admire calmness because I'm not. Next up, Michael K. Vaughan. I think he was solely responsible for introducing me to the Western genre, not something I had really read anything of until I joined Booktube, and now I absolutely love it. Now I know he reads a lot of pulpy things and sci-fi and things like that, and also likes his comics, but it's the Western genre that I feel he introduced me to, and I am grateful. Gavin at Genre Reads. Again, we've done a couple of buddy reads and I enjoy reading with him. He is very into the pulpy stuff, but he does the most amazing oh god, what is it called? My mind's gone blank. Project Gutenberg searches, where he pulls out things for various reading events. I mean, not just one, he does it for loads of different reading events. And just introduces you to some fabulous things, and I love that. And finally, there's another Greg, and that is Ghost Reader in the Sky, whose Cowboy Poetry Thursday has become a fixture of my week. I start my Thursdays by listening to him and to Pat and probably to Alan as well, do Poetry Thursday. I love his channel. He reads widely as well, various genres, but the cowboy poetry on a Thursday is just fabulous. Right, so that is it. If you're watching this video and would like to do this tag, please consider yourself tagged. I am going to tag everybody that I've mentioned. However, most of them have already been tagged by Pat, and they may have already done this because I've got a lot of catching up to do when it comes to watching YouTube videos because I've watched none. But this tag is fabulous. Please do it. And thank you for watching. I will speak to you very soon. Bye for now.